Um, Thank you, Todd. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of this land that I'm speaking on today. I bring the goodwill of my Bunuba people from the Kimberley in northwest Western Australia. I'd also like to acknowledge Mark Stone, the CEO of Parks Victoria, Ian Walker, who's been trying to contact me in the last month or so elusively. I'd like to acknowledge my fellow speakers, Aaron and Steve, and also the distinguished guests here today, especially the Aboriginal people that have travelled from their countries within Victoria, but also across the length and breadth, if they have, of this great continent we call Australia. Just a little bit about myself, and I'm glad Steve had an IT hitch here because I was thinking to myself, I should have bloody checked with that IT character about which button I should press. So I'm assuming, Steve, I just go from picture to picture, is that right? As I said, and Todd has alluded to, my people are Bunuba, and I belong to a little subset of Bunuba called Dangu. Dangu is my clan, and if you've been to Dangu, or what people commonly known in the Kimberley as Gigi Gorge, it's a beautiful place where all my ancestors come from, and each weekend I go out camping and fishing and enjoying the fruits and telling my children about their law and culture. But it was when I first got invited by a man I've become very admiring of now since I met him at the 2020 summit, Damien Bell, to come and speak at this forum last year. I sort of, off the cuff, said, yeah, no worries, Damien. I think it was in Adelaide we were talking, and then I did a little bit of research later, and I seen the session I was going to talk at was about health. I'm going, oh my God, just about failed Year 11 and got electrical trade, but got no tertiary degrees. What the hell would I know about health? Other than understanding that health in our Aboriginal society in Australia is all about understanding the 3 L's around your language, law and land, and connectivity to land. And the health of our country gives us the health in our being. And in my people, once you achieve that balance between your head and your heart and the country that you belong to, my people call it lian, a very careful and special place to be. And it's once you lose that lian, as many of our young people in Fitzroy Crossing and other places where I come from, then you start to head down the track of which what I want to talk a bit about later, the impoverishment and low sort of socio-economic status of our Aboriginal people, not only in my Bunuba people, but also across Australia. So, now Steve, help me here. I'm going to talk today a little bit about land, people and culture and water. Because in the last couple of years I've been drawn out of Fitzroy Crossing to facilitate a dialogue in Northern Australia as to not only what Aboriginal people think and have aspirations for in maintaining that connectivity and their links to land and water in Northern Australia, but I also was drawn into a more broader discussion about the sustainable development in Northern Australia and the impacts on the water resources for the Australian government, which I previously chaired the Northern Australian Land and Water Task Force. And why did I get into this space? Well, I live on the Fitzroy River, and this is the Fitzroy catchment and its tributaries, which is about the centre of the Kimberley. The Fitzroy River's mean average is about 9,800 gigalitres per annum, and in some years puts out an output greater than the Amazon River in South America. So this river comes under constant focus by the state and Australian government and by developers and irrigators and everybody who think that they can conquer this great river, as we call Bundralangadi. And so for someone like myself who's in a group of Bunuba people, a language group, with 6 other language groups along the river, when we get drawn into the discussion about the impacts on our law and culture and the potential impacts on a land and a river system that we've been maintaining for thousands of years. And so the primary site on the Fitzroy is a place called Diamond Gorge, and then another one on the Margaret River at Mueller Range, at the Margaret Gorge. And so someone like myself, having some reasonable level of education, gets drawn into being the articulator of what are our concerns as Bunuba people, but also the other 6 language groups. And that's where I found myself in this space. And if you're ever up there, you know, Fitzroy Crossing, it's 300 kilometres one way, there's no houses, just fences and an old cow to run over. One bitumen road through the place, being Great Northern Highway, and the other way is 400 k's to Broome. And we have about 1,500 people living in the town side of Fitzroy Crossing, and about another 2,000 living on the outskirts in small outstations. About 95% Aboriginal in our place we call the Fitzroy Valley. And so when I was previously asked to continue the role as chairperson of the Northern Australian Land and Water Task Force post Senator Bill Heffernan, I found myself in facilitating a dialogue that was quite schizophrenic in its nature. You have a large population in southern Australia concerned about the climatic shifts and what's happening in southern Australia with droughts, and also the impacts and the process of reform and change that's much needed in the Murray-Darling Basin. And so immediately when the Australian government and states and the community as a whole then start thinking about food security and water security, which is one of our great challenges as we go forward in Australia. Not only in Australia, I think we're one of the driest continents on Earth, yet we're probably ranked about 4th or 5th in the world in per capita in water usage. And so there's this debate that's happening and tension between what should happen in Australia. And Northern Australia, this region that's highlighted here by its catchments and river systems, which was the primary focus of the Northern Australian Land and Water Task Force, was all about debunking or dispelling myths, rhetorical statements and views of Northern Australia. So you've got a southern group of people in Australia talking about the potential of Northern Australia, and you've got people that actually live in Northern Australia saying that it's not possible. And yet in Southern Australia they say there's 1 million gigalitres of rainfall in Northern Australia, and it falls on the ground, and then there's this huge expanse where we're going to grow food. And so over the last couple of years, our task force has created a dialogue and a discussion, not only with the bureaucracy and the politicians, but also with the community of Northern Australia in what the future should hold. And one of the major people in Northern Australia, as with elsewhere in Australia, is Aboriginal people, and the sacredness and the importance of one of the oldest living cultures in the world.